Good afternoon. I'd like to thank Professor Schröder for the invitation to speak today. I'm timed. So, Thames Christian School. In Italy Builds, a survey of historical and contemporary architecture and urbanism from the 1950s, the author presents a series of long-established public spaces with simple plans and black and white photos, cause and effect. One begets the other. A photograph of a public space in San Gimignano shows a group of people standing, many in conversation with one another, some in the sun, but the majority in the shade. One senses it's an intensely hot day. Their shadows are short, the sun is high, probably close to midday in midsummer. To the right, the walls of the building shade the street. To the left, a huge stone arch suggests a generous covered outside space, a portico or loggia. The architecture of this open room affords more than the accidental shade provided by the walls. The geometry, scale, porosity, and orientation of built form offers people a choice, whether to bask in the sunlight or retreat to the shade. In other words, where to dwell and in turn with whom to speak. These people seek comfort and company. The figure ground of buildings and public space precipitates differing responses dependent on the season and the time of day. The microclimate is the product of the weather and the built form. That is to say, the ambition of the architecture is to provide shelter, and by what means. As this photo illustrates so well, the architecture informs when and how people position themselves and with whom they then might converse. Here, sociality might be seen as a product of the architecture, construction, climate control, form, space, and time. It is in unfamiliar places, cultures, and climates that we may be most receptive to the certain aspects of architecture. Of course, it is through experience and this kind of research that we learn and bring characteristics to our work. No two people can understand or describe a city the same way. Their lived experience is not the same. However, there is still a risk that we only think of the city as an amalgam of inert figures, matter and form. But however familiar this reference may be, as Morandi reminds us, it is the space between that is of interest. It is there in the infinitely complicated contiguity of space that events occur and sensation is experienced. Time is not just measured in the weathering of building fabric. Robin Evans' essay, Figures, Doors and Passages from 1978, offers a history and critique of the corridor. The corridor or passageway is a functional distribution system, making, as he explains, all rooms equally accessible. Whilst facilitating communication, it reduces contact, bringing remote spaces closer together, but pushing those close together further apart. Ultimately, the device gave rise to a predictive and prescribed use of spaces, or terminal rooms, as he called them, the product of functionalism at the expense of inhabitation, association, and sensation. By comparison, an architecture without corridors gives inhabitants the freedom to imagine and reimagine a building in much the same way we each have a unique understanding of the city, as an infinite number of scenes connected to usefulness, proximity, experience, and memory. The city affords this complexity. The question is, how might a building? It must do it through the remaking, rewriting, and reinterpreting of patterns of those who inhabit the building, time and space, motion and stasis. It's not necessarily the complexity of the thing itself, but the complexity of interpretation that is of interest. Again and again, this has led us to study and develop plan types that are concentric. That is, ones that have a common center that binds the various rooms or activities together. Unlike the corridor, a courtyard or cloister, be it indoor or outdoor, facilitates communication without reducing contact, holding spaces in an equilibrium that brings remote spaces closer together without pushing those that might already be close together further apart. This has a direct relation with time. With this early project, we sought to make a collegiate research environment. The design reproduced the cloistered form, but as a multi-story structure. Each group of people had a more equitable relationship with the whole. Hierarchies normally generated by floors and relative proximities and accentuated by circulation are compressed into an introspective and intimate world, a singular space of sensation. The office and the idea of work is associated not with the interior, but with the central captured landscape of the garden, in which the threshold between the two becomes the protagonist. In this case, the brief for a school required, amongst other things, 2 halls, one for exams, a second for assemblies. The building was planned like Russian dolls with one hall inside the other. The inner hall framed the peristyle between which doors, when open, created space for assemblies. The plan had placed a cloister at the very centre of the school, a cloister used both to represent the institution and to reorganise the school as a whole. The plan affects a spatial and temporal dislocation, representing a progression from external contingent realities to the autonomous, idealised form of the institution. This third, a hybrid building, combined a school and apartments. The party for the school distributed the programme to the site's perimeter to carve out a courtyard and substitute corridors with open galleries. The result is a direct relationship between inside and outside. Between inside and outside space is efficient and healthy. The model means the school may also be easily understood. Each room, that is, each group of children, has a more or less equal relationship with the courtyard and with that, the institution and their world. These plan types facilitate communication without reducing contact, holding spaces in an equilibrium that brings remote spaces closer together without pushing those that might already be close together further apart, unlike the corridor. Both within the courtyard and on the street outside, the architecture shapes interaction and creates opportunities for association. Such spaces rooted in the fabric of the building embed social patterns in the architecture, the wall becoming a form of social infrastructure. Thames Christian School and Baptist Chapel is another hybrid building, in this case combining a school and a church, and shares much of the DNA of the 3 earlier projects. Large inner-city housing blocks and mainline train tracks are its immediate, more raucous neighbour. The school is raised above a 2-storey plinth. The school's hall and the church form the foundations of the building. These spaces carved out of the plinth. The church with an entrance from a new square to the north, the school with an entrance court to the southeast. But for a group of mature trees that the plan preserves, the building occupies the whole site. Within the chapel, a column and a beam bisect. A crucifix is laid on its side. The column, required to support the floors of the school above, is an indication of the infrastructural nature of the plinth. The beam supports a sliding screen to subdivide the chapel. The school hall, a dining room, gymnasium, dance studio, assembly hall, and performance space, all rolled into one, is shared with the community. Above the plinth, the upper floors are planned around 2 courtyards, one facing east, the other west, which combine to form an S-shaped plan. 2 L-shaped wings conjoin to a central bar of circulation, with classrooms elevated above the ground. In this manner, the building creates a sanctuary for its many neurodiverse pupils, negotiating between the inner life of the school and the surrounding city. The school entrance, close to the station, is marked by a wide gate to the court. This leads to a hallway, a single-storey drawer pulled out from the plinth, and vertical circulation, which are located in the middle of the plan, the 2 courtyards above pivoting around this fulcrum. The episodic progression from the street via the external court, hallway and stair extends the journey, separating the institution from its context. But then 2 floors above the street, arriving on the landing between the 2 courtyards, one is immediately immersed in a highly condensed school environment. That means almost everything is apparent at once. In effect, the section and plan first slow down, then speed up the experience, one compensating for the other. The introverted nature of the building, a response to its close proximity to the railway, protects its inhabitants from the steady noise of trains, but also the sun and the gaze of nearby residents. Like the earlier projects, deep courtyards and external galleries shade naturally ventilated, dual-aspect classrooms. The plan and the structural frame enable space, much of it dual aspect, to be replanned and the continuous glass screens that line the courtyards to be reconfigured as pedagogies change. The brick monolith denotes one time frame, the glazed walls of the courtyard, the building's underbelly, another. Spaces for art, music, design and science, along with the library, are dispersed amongst the general classrooms. The compression of the plan and the transparency of the glazed screens manifest school life. There is a panorama from each landing and a view from each courtyard to the other. This density and transparency contrasts with the outward guise of the facades. This intense sociality and speed playing out against the enduring outer shell. Amid calls for more visibility, the tendency is often to pursue architectures that attempt to be open, that break down the barriers between public and private. Thames Christian School and Baptist Chapel recall and develop instead a sense of architectural continuity that transcends a superficial pursuit of image. The party proposes a typology in which a school and church contribute to the overall form, yet operate separately, each facade playing its part. To the east, the facade breaks down in scale, it being both an expression of the spaces within and a reaction to the copse of trees that the building captures and protects. The hall and church form the foundations of the building, the outer walls, its civic presence, its benevolence. The architecture offers stability and permanence. It addresses the site boundaries directly, consolidating streets, forming public space. And the configuration and construction of the school offers immediacy and adaptability, each court a proscenium framing a prospect of the city and a contrasting relationship with the sun. It is both part of the city and apart from it. Function aside, this new permanence brings primary structure to this part of the city in what was otherwise a loose setting of mid-20th century housing blocks, where also the chosen brick, the primary building material, plays as important a part in the urban design as the position and massing of the building. As Robin Evans concludes in his essay, Figures, Doors and Passages, the cumulative effect of architecture during the last 2 centuries has been like that of a general lobotomy performed on society at large, obliterating vast areas of social experience. It's employed more and more as a preventative measure, an agency for peace, security and segregation, which by its very nature limits the horizon of experience, reducing noise, transmission, differentiating movement patterns, suppressing smells, stemming vandalism, cutting down the accumulation of dirt, impeding the spread of disease, veiling embarrassment, closeting indecency, and abolishing the unnecessary, incidentally reducing daily life to a private shadow play. But on the other side of this definition, there is surely another kind of architecture that would seek to give full play to the things that have been so carefully masked by this antitype. An architecture arising out of the deep fascination that draws people towards others, an architecture that recognizes passion, carnality, and sociality. The matrix of connected rooms might well be an integral feature of such buildings. Whilst the plans of Thames Christian School do not constitute a matrix of connected rooms, they do, with the 2 open courts and high degree of transparency throughout, reveal, as Evans suggests, another kind of architecture in which a multitude of activities are synchronized by their visibility, by the configuration of plan and the nature of facades, together conjuring up a cinematic diorama of life. So this isn't simply a rejection of the corridor per se, but a recognition of what is possible when more open morphologies are employed, and the effect that these have on phenomena, patterns of association, and human sensation. Thank you.